The divine masculine's biggest fear is coming. You need to be prepared. Have you ever felt that something is about to change in your twin flame journey? As if the energy has shifted. As if the divine masculine is standing on the edge of a life-changing breakthrough or a life-changing breakdown. What if I told you that one of the biggest fears the divine masculine will ever face isn't losing you? It's losing the version of themselves they've spent their entire life trying to protect. Because before true transformation can happen, the ego begins to panic, old wounds resurface, doubts become louder, and emotions they've buried for years suddenly demand to be felt. This is the moment many people misunderstand. From the outside, it may look like they're becoming more distant, more confused, or even pulling away. But from a twin flame perspective, many believe this can also be the moment when the deepest inner transformation begins. In today's video, we'll explore why this fear appears, what it may look like during the twin flame journey, and how you can navigate this period with wisdom, patience, and healthy boundaries. Remember, every person and every relationship is different. Not every difficult situation is a twin flame connection, and genuine love always includes respect, honesty, and personal responsibility. So stay with me until the end. Because understanding this fear may completely change the way you see the divine masculine's journey and your own. Section 1. A powerful shift is approaching. There are moments on the twin flame journey when everything seems quiet. The signs become subtle. Communication slows. Life appears to move in an ordinary rhythm. Yet beneath the surface, something profound is changing. Many spiritual traditions describe these periods as the calm before a major inner transformation. If you follow the twin flame perspective, this is often the stage where the divine masculine begins confronting fears that have been hidden for years. This isn't necessarily a fear of another person. It's a fear of change, a fear of vulnerability, a fear of letting go of an old identity that once felt safe. And according to many twin flame teachings, when this fear rises to the surface, it can become one of the most important turning points on the entire journey. The title of this video may sound dramatic. Divine masculine's biggest fear is coming. But what does that really mean? It doesn't mean something terrible is destined to happen. It doesn't mean every twin flame connection will unfold the same way. Instead, it points to an inner experience, a period where unresolved emotions can no longer stay buried. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for years. At first, you barely notice the weight. You become accustomed to it. You tell yourself it's just part of life. But one day, the burden becomes impossible to ignore. Every step feels heavier. Every movement demands more effort. Eventually, you realize that if you want to keep moving forward, you have to stop carrying what no longer serves you. Many people believe this is exactly what happens during a significant stage of the divine masculine's awakening. The emotional walls they've relied on for protection begin to crack. The distractions that once kept uncomfortable feelings at a distance lose their power. Success doesn't silence the emptiness. Busyness doesn't erase the longing. External achievements no longer provide lasting peace. For perhaps the first time, they're invited to look inward. And that invitation can feel both liberating and frightening. Why? Because looking inward means facing every belief they've avoided, every moment they question their worth, every fear of rejection, every disappointment they never fully processed, every version of themselves they pretended not to be. This is why many people describe the twin flame journey as a spiritual mirror. Rather than simply bringing two people together, it reflects the parts of ourselves that still seek healing. For the divine masculine, that reflection can feel incredibly intense. The instinct may be to stay busy, to focus on work, to avoid difficult conversations, to convince themselves that everything is fine. But healing has a remarkable way of asking for attention. The emotions we ignore don't disappear. They often return in new forms until we're ready to face them. That is why this stage is so significant. It's not about punishment. It's about transformation. It's not about losing control. It's about discovering a healthier relationship with yourself. And perhaps the biggest fear isn't losing another person at all. Perhaps the biggest fear is letting go of the version of yourself you've spent years protecting. Because change asks us to release familiar patterns, even when those patterns have caused pain. The known can feel safer than the unknown, even when the unknown holds the possibility of a more authentic life. This is why awakening often begins with discomfort. Growth asks us to leave behind old stories, old defenses, old identities, and step into a future we cannot fully predict. If you're watching this video because you're trying to understand the divine masculine, remember something important. Every person's journey is unique. Not everyone will experience these emotions in the same way, and not every difficult relationship reflects a twin flame connection. The ideas shared here come from a spiritual perspective that many people find meaningful, but they should never replace healthy communication, personal responsibility, or respect in real-life relationships. Still, the underlying lesson is universal. Every human being reaches moments when avoiding fear is no longer possible. Eventually, life invites us to become more honest with ourselves, more compassionate, more authentic, more willing to face what we've hidden. And according to many twin flame teachings, this is exactly where the divine masculine's greatest transformation begins. The biggest fear isn't the end of the journey. It's often the doorway to becoming the person they were always capable of being. And as we continue through this video, you'll discover why this fear appears, what it reveals, and how understanding it can completely change the way you view the twin flame path. Section 2. The fear behind the silence. Why the divine masculine pulls away. One of the most confusing experiences in the twin flame journey is when the divine masculine suddenly becomes distant. One day, the connection feels undeniable. The conversations flow naturally. The energy feels magnetic. Everything seems to be moving towards something beautiful. Then, almost without warning, they become quiet. Messages become shorter, communication slows down, or they disappear completely. For many people, the first thought is, they don't love me anymore. But according to many twin flame teachings, the silence is not always the absence of love. Sometimes, it's the presence of fear, not fear of the divine feminine, not even fear of the connection itself, but fear of everything the connection awakens within them. Because a true soul connection doesn't simply bring happiness, it also shines a light on every hidden wound that has been buried for years. The divine masculine may suddenly begin questioning everything they thought they knew about themselves. Am I enough? Can I really be the partner they deserve? What if I fail? What if I open my heart and get hurt? What if my entire life has to change? These questions don't always have easy answers. And when someone has spent years protecting themselves from emotional pain, those questions can feel overwhelming. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you is the life you've always known. In front of you is a bridge leading toward a completely different future. You know crossing that bridge could change your life forever. But you also know there is no turning back once you take the first step. Many spiritual teachers describe the divine masculine's awakening in a similar way. The old version of themselves begins to feel too small, yet the new version hasn't fully emerged. They find themselves caught between two worlds. One part wants to stay where everything feels familiar. The other part feels called toward something deeper. This inner conflict often creates hesitation, not because love is missing, but because transformation is uncomfortable. The ego prefers certainty. The soul invites growth, and those two forces rarely move in the same direction. This is why many divine masculines throw themselves into work, personal goals, or daily responsibilities during periods of separation. From the outside, it may appear as though they're avoiding the connection, but internally, they may be trying to regain a sense of control over emotions they don't yet understand. Of course, it's important to remember that every situation is different. Sometimes distance simply means someone isn't ready for a relationship. Sometimes people have personal challenges unrelated to spirituality. Healthy relationships should never depend on waiting indefinitely or ignoring your own needs. The twin flame journey, if you believe in it, is ultimately about mutual growth, not endless uncertainty. Still, many people find comfort in understanding that fear often hides beneath emotional withdrawal. Fear has a remarkable way of disguising itself. Sometimes it looks like pride. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like indifference. But underneath those layers is often a person who desperately wants connection while also fearing everything that true intimacy requires. Because real love asks us to remove the masks we've worn for years. It asks us to be honest about our pain, to admit when we're scared, to let another person see the parts of ourselves we've worked so hard to hide. For someone who has built their identity around being strong, independent, or emotionally self-sufficient, this can feel like the greatest challenge of all. Yet this is also where healing begins. The divine masculine slowly discovers that courage isn't pretending to have no fear. Courage is moving forward despite fear. It's choosing honesty over avoidance, presence over escape, growth over comfort. And although this transformation rarely happens overnight, every step toward emotional authenticity weakens the fear that once controlled them. Because the biggest fear was never love itself. It was the belief that they had to face love while hiding who they truly were. The moment they begin releasing that belief, their awakening truly begins. Section 3. The greatest fear isn't losing you, it's losing the old version of themselves. As the divine masculine continues to awaken, something unexpected begins to happen. The fear that once seemed to be about the relationship slowly reveals its true source. It was never only about losing the divine feminine. It was about losing the identity they had spent years creating. For most of their life, they may have believed they knew exactly who they were: the strong one, the independent one, the provider, the problem solver, the person who never needed help, the one who always stayed in control. These identities may have helped them survive difficult experiences, but survival is not the same as living. And the twin flame journey, according to many spiritual teachings, doesn't allow people to hide behind old versions of themselves forever. It gently, and sometimes intensely, asks one question: who are you when every mask falls away? That question can be frightening. Because when an identity begins to crumble, it can feel like losing a part of yourself. Imagine living in the same house for 20 years. It may not be perfect, the walls may be cracked, the roof may leak. The foundation may no longer be strong, but it's familiar. You know every room, every window, every corner. Now imagine someone tells you that before you can build your dream home, the old one must first be torn down. Would you feel excited, or would you feel afraid? Most people would feel both. That is what inner transformation often feels like. The old life no longer fits, but the new life hasn't fully arrived. The divine masculine finds themselves standing between two identities, one built from fear, the other waiting to be built from truth. This transition is uncomfortable because the ego resists change. The ego whispers, stay where it's safe. Don't risk getting hurt. Become too vulnerable. Don't let anyone see your weaknesses. But the soul speaks differently. It says, your freedom is on the other side of honesty. Your peace is on the other side of healing. Your love is on the other side of courage. These two voices often create an invisible battle. From the outside, it may appear that nothing is happening, but inside, every belief is being questioned. Many divine masculines begin realizing that success alone cannot bring fulfillment. Achievements cannot replace emotional connection. Keeping busy cannot silence the heart forever. Eventually, there comes a moment when distractions stop working. The quiet becomes impossible to ignore. The emotions they once buried begin asking to be acknowledged. This can feel overwhelming. Some people respond by withdrawing even further. Others begin searching for answers through spirituality, personal development, therapy, meditation, or deep self-reflection. Every person's path is different. There is no single timeline for awakening. Some people transform quickly. Others need years to unlearn patterns they've carried since childhood. And that's why patience must always be balanced with healthy boundaries. Understanding someone's inner struggle does not mean accepting repeated disrespect, emotional neglect, or unhealthy behavior. Compassion and self-respect can exist together. In fact, they should. One of the most powerful lessons of the twin flame journey is that both individuals are invited to grow. The divine masculine is challenged to release fear and embrace emotional honesty. The divine feminine is challenged to release attachment, trust her own path, and remain grounded in self-love. Neither person's healing can be completed by the other. Each soul must choose transformation for themselves. And perhaps this is the biggest fear the divine masculine eventually faces, not the fear of loving someone deeply, but the fear of becoming someone completely different from the person they've always believed themselves to be. Because transformation asks for surrender. It asks them to let go of old defenses, old expectations, old wounds, old stories, and while that process can feel like an ending, it is also the beginning of something extraordinary, a life where love is no longer controlled by fear, a heart that no longer hides behind silence, a person who no longer measures their worth by perfection, but by authenticity. When that shift finally happens, the greatest fear loses its power, because the divine masculine realizes something they couldn't see before. They were never losing themselves. They were discovering who they truly were all along. If this message spoke to your heart, don't scroll away just yet. The divine masculine's biggest fear isn't meant to destroy them. It's meant to transform them. And perhaps the same is true for all of us. Real growth begins the moment we stop running from what we're meant to heal. If this video gave you a new perspective, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming twin flame messages. Now, before you leave, the next video on your screen reveals the 7 undeniable signs the divine masculine is entering the final stage of awakening. If you've been noticing strange shifts, synchronicities, or unexpected changes in your connection, you won't want to miss it. Click that video now and continue your journey with us. Thank you for watching. Stay grounded, trust your inner wisdom, and remember, the greatest transformation always begins within. I'll see you in the next video.